very special episode of Vike Equip. Today, we're going to take on the comma.
Hi Vikings, I'm Terry,
And I'm Susan. Welcome to Vike Equip.
where we are equipping you, our students, to be successful in the classroom.
Even though most of us are intimidated by the use of commas, there are really only 4 major ways and 4 minor ways to use these little pieces of punctuation. So let's look at the 4 major ways to use the comma. The first way is to use the comma as a lister. A lister just means I have a list of items, and we're very familiar with how to use this between words. The street vendors sold watches, necklaces, and earrings. I see 3 items, so I want to separate those 3 items with commas. If there were only 2 items, that's not necessarily a list that would require commas. We would put an and between those 2 items and it would be fine. But if we have the 3 items, we use the comma. The comma before the and is sometimes referred to as the Oxford comma, and it's up in debate in English circles as to whether it's even necessary. But most of your instructors at this point will ask that you go ahead and insert that Oxford comma. It makes it easy to see the list itself. We can also use that comma between phrases. So you'll remember that a phrase is a group of words that does not contain a subject and a verb. Sometimes we'll have several of those phrases indicating a list. The pitcher adjusted his cap, pawed the ground, and threw the ball. I can separate the things that the pitcher did with these commas. The last way that I can use the comma as a lister is between clauses. You'll remember that a clause is a group of words that does have a subject and a verb. And so in this last example, we have the water was blue, the beach was warm, and the day was perfect. I have the potential for 3 sentences. Each of those clauses have a subject and a verb. But why put a period there when I can pull them into a nice list and separate the items with commas?
Another way we can use a comma is comma as a linker. And if you'll remember, in one of our previous videos, we talked about the comma and conjunction and using those fanboy words. So let's look at some examples. What we have to do is make sure that we have 2 complete sentences. Sam closed all the windows, but the storm never arrived. We have Sam closed the windows, the storm never arrived. 2 complete sentences. We're going to use the comma and the coordinating conjunction of but. I like shopping, so I need to get another job. I like shopping is a complete sentence. I need to get another job is a complete sentence. We join those with a comma and a conjunction, the fanboy so. Let's look at an example where we would not use a comma with a conjunction. I like shopping and need to get another job. I like shopping is a sentence that could stand alone by itself, but if I just said need to get another job, that's not a standalone sentence. So in that case, I just use the and without a comma to join the 2.
The third major way that we can use a comma is the comma as an introducer. And we're basically introducing the subject of the sentence. Sometimes a sentence will begin with just an introductory word, like, yes, I agree with you, or Dad, can I get some advice? A few years ago, I had a student that said, what about dude? Yeah, absolutely. If your sentence is dude, that was gnarly, I'm going to put a comma after dude. It's just a kickstarter, getting the sentence started. The comma introduces the subject. We can also use that comma to introduce after an introductory phrase. Just in time, Sherry applied the brakes. The subject of this sentence is Sherry. Just in time is just a phrase, remember, a group of words without a subject and a verb, that sort of kick-started our sentence. Muttering under his breath, Hank reviewed the terms. Again, the subject of the sentence is Hank. The strong part of that sentence is Hank reviewed the terms. Muttering under his breath is just a phrase that gets that sentence started. And finally, we can use it after an introductory dependent clause. These are your complex sentences. If I have a bully that strikes at the beginning, like if or because or after, when, while, if I have one of those at the beginning, I have to have a comma in the sentence. And now you know why. We're using the comma to introduce the subject of the strong half of the sentence. If I go to Walmart, comma, I will pick up some milk. These are the ones where your teachers told you put the comma where there's a pause. You can actually hear the pause in these complex sentences.
The fourth major way that we will use a comma is as an inserter. We use commas to set off non-essential information. So if we say our game was canceled, that's just a straight sentence. But if we say our game unfortunately was canceled, unfortunately is a non-essential piece of information. So we want to set that word off with commas. She walked all over town yesterday trying to find her dog. What is essential to this sentence is that she walked all over town yesterday. It's not really essential that we know she was trying to find her dog, but since we have that, we need the comma to set that off. Here's an example with someone's name. Sue Williams, who teaches at our school, won a nice award. So we have Sue Williams won a nice award. It's really not essential that we know that she teaches at the school, but then let's look at this next example. A lady who teaches at our school won a nice award. All that information is essential because we have a lady, not a specific name, worked at the school and won a nice award. All of that is essential, so there are no commas. So remember, we only use commas if there's something that can be taken out of the sentence and it still makes sense. We use a comma to emphasize those non-essential words. So now that we reviewed the four major ways to use commas, we're going to major in commas and we're going to insert them in our sentences. Let's look at this first example. She folded the clothes, put them away, and sat down with a book. So we have a list and we need to separate this list. She folded the clothes, comma, put them away, comma, and sat down with a good book. Now we have our list items separated. This next sentence, I have to go to class or I will not pass. I have to go to class, I will not pass. We have our fanboy conjunction or, so we need a comma. I have to go to class, comma, or I will not pass. Our third way is with the introductory word while. While driving, I saw deer in a meadow. So while driving is the introductory information. Then we need a comma. I saw deer in a meadow. I saw deer in a meadow can stand alone. Lastly, we have a sentence about a movie. Jaws, of course, is still my favorite movie. So we have this word that's not essential, of course. So we need to separate that with commas. Jaws, of course, is still my favorite movie. Now you have mastered commas.
So we've looked at the four major ways to use a comma. Let's spend a little time looking at four minor ways to use the comma. The first is in quotations. And we've covered this in an additional video, but let's just look at how it's used here. The carnival barker cried, "Step right up and win." We always separate quoted words from non-quoted words with some kind of punctuation, usually a comma. And so you can see that the comma follows my words before I introduce the carnival barker's words. If the quote's at the beginning, the rule stays the same. You get what you give, replied Jennifer Lopez. Again, I'm separating my words from Jennifer Lopez's words with some kind of punctuation, usually a comma. It doesn't matter whether I insert my words in the middle or at the beginning or the end, I'm always separating with those commas. This is sort of tricky, this second rule, where commas are used with dates and cities and states. I actually didn't learn this until I was teaching English. I wrote the essay on June 30th, 2012 and submitted it the next day. I knew that I needed to put a comma between the day and the year, but I didn't realize that I also put a comma after the year anytime I list a day with a year. The same is true for cities and states. I knew that I put that comma between Houston and Texas, but I didn't realize that I needed a comma after Texas as well anytime I combine cities and states. So if I just say, I want to run to Fort Smith after class and grab a burger, no commas needed. But if I say, I need to run to Fort Smith, Arkansas after class to get a hamburger, now I would need a comma after Fort Smith and a comma after Arkansas.
The other minor ways that we use commas is with names and numbers and for clarity. So we know typically if we write a number that's in the thousands, we need a comma. We traveled 1,293 miles. We need a comma after the 1 for the rest of the number. Fred, I think we're on the wrong road. So I'm saying Fred, emphasizing that. And so that's with a name. And so after his name, I need a comma. Fred, I think we're on the wrong road. This is another example of where you can hear that pause and where the comma is needed. If you're the last one to leave, Paul, switch off the lights. Again, another example with a name, and we use the comma to set those off. So you can have names at the front, at the middle, or at the end, but we must separate those with commas. We can also use commas for clarity. Let's look at this first example. Whoever it is about to be punished. That kind of gets cumbersome reading that. But if we listen for a pause, whoever it is, comma, is about to be punished. It's too confusing when we have the two is words right together with no separation. So let's put that comma in there for clarity.
Until next time, Vikings, sail on!